soil. Are you excited to start digging deeper? I know you're going to love today's guest. Jono, all the way from New Zealand, is joining us. How are you doing, Jono?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Ray. Really good.
Excellent. Well, I know our soil lovers are going to be really keen to know who you are and how you fit into the landscape of regenerating and healing our soil. So share with them a little bit about you.
Sure. So I am a regenerative agriculture coach. I spend a lot of my time educating farmers on the ground, working with farmers, creating resilient food production systems that encompass the whole. And I also spend a lot of time teaching students, and all the way from ages 5 and up to university level, really getting people reconnected and engaged with their landscapes. And other than that, I'm a father. I have 2 beautiful children. And yeah, that's who I am.
Yeah, love that. Yeah. I feel like, over the years we've gotten to know each other. I've seen you peak up on the online world, I guess, and education being near and dear to my space. I think we kind of hit it off from the start going, we can roll up our sleeves, get our hands dirty and educate everyone and let them see the world from a little bit of a different lens. And I know you've been busy in different enterprises and you've kind of spent a little while in this. I think last time, one of the times we chatted, you were even on the road living in like a motorhome, I guess, on wheels, and you were like, that committed to like going on site and spending time with farmers. You didn't want to just do like a 1 hour visit or a 6 hour, consultation. You wanted to really embody the farm. How important is that on the ground coaching, as you refer to it as before?
Yeah, that's right. That was the RA20 tour. We did a tour in camper vans, me and my business partner, Peter Barrett from Lindburn Station. We did 27 shows from the top of the North Island of New Zealand right down to the bottom of the South in the space of just under 3 weeks of nonstop.
Crazy. I was watching. We were in lockdown and I was so envious. No, of you going around the country teaching. I was like, I want to be.
We had just come out of lockdown and I was definitely ready for it. I was ready for some adventure. And and so how important is that, man? It's important, and context, like everything, context is key. What I mean by on the ground is I think it really helps being related to farmers. Like when I speak, it's from experience. For those of you that don't know, I was always a farmer, and actually the only time I wasn't farming, I was actually a chemical agronomist, responsible for coming up with chemical and fertilizer recommendations for various fresh produce and seed production, arable, pastoral systems. And so, and then as well as that, 11 years in the dairy industry, 3 years in sheep and beef industry as a farmer myself. Everything that I talk about from having done. And I think that gets out of the way some of that stuff, like who's this expert, or who, when I was a farmer, we'd get the advisors coming in, most of which were young, female and attractive, coming in their flash vehicles, freshly graduated from university, telling us what to do. And it was always like, although that's on the ground, what's missing is that sense of relatedness. And the thing is, it gets, for me, it was what it was delivered in a way, although the systems that I was involved with were very simplified, in fact, oversimplified, they were massively complicated. So like people would come in with all this information and deliver it in a way that was just like, whoa, that sounds like too much to question. And so I didn't question what I was told. I just did what I was told for most of my career. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And there was no power in that for me. I had no say in the matter. And so now what it is for me is by that on the ground support, what I mean is really getting down there with the farmers, getting behind and underneath what it is they're doing and why, and then together coming up with solutions that overcome those limitations. And I'm out there learning as much as my clients. I avoid the use of the word advisor and expert, because I'm neither of those things. One, I don't tell farmers what to do. I'm about empowering farmers and giving them a say. But then also, and then also I sort of feel like, who am I to think that I know what's best for these guys' farms? Like, although I've got lots of high level and perhaps foundational information to give, which helps for us to make these decisions and create these systems together, I think the key thing is I'm not attached to anything looking a certain way. And so that's where that sort of working together comes in.
Yeah. And I think that encapsulates being on the ground. It's about being there physically, smelling, hearing, tasting, and getting to know the farmer. I think that's a really important aspect of this, because a lot of the information that is online and resources and ebooks, it's one-way communication. It might tell the story of what worked for that particular person, but it's not taking into account the actual landscape and going, oh, you're really close to water, or you might have this, and there's a lot of variables. And I think that's what's really amazing about the regenerative space and holistic, is seeing all the parts to make up the whole, and you do only get that. And you touched on something that's near and dear for me, which is like coming from experience. I think like when you've actually done something and it's coming from personal experience rather than knowledge, it just has a different energy. And so so you've also been very busy going on stages and speaking and doing talks. Is that something that really energizes you? Because I guess that's not on the paddocks, but you can see the people in the room, they're lighting up as you're speaking. Share a little bit about like that journey and like empowering people in more of a classroom environment or a presentation.
Yeah, it is a new area for me, Ray. When I say new, like, this life that I've created was not predictable. Like, I was once very shy. I was, and actually I have this little, it's hard to believe, isn't it? I actually have this little photo here with me. It's facing me. I'm going to turn it around. It'll give you a fright. Like, this was me as a farmer, grumpy.
Wow.
And look at the physical change.
Yes.
And so with that, as my way of being as a farmer, like this life I live out there with others was not something that I could see coming, nor was it something that I necessarily planned or prepared for. It was just like when I became present to my purpose of, how do I create a world that works aligned with nature? It expressed or manifested itself as something that I could not shut up about. And I'm sure you can relate to that, Ray. It's like all of a sudden I got purposeful, and what needed to be said and the right opportunities to speak and, most importantly, listen, just appeared in front of me. And it was about taking those opportunities as they arose until, here I am today, quite regularly getting asked to. I actually just finished last week, a week on the road, 6 flights in 7 days. Wow. Traveling around, speaking for the New Zealand Wine Growers Association across New Zealand. So it's a whole different area that wasn't an area that I, went out to impact. But turns out, there's a lot of impact to be had in that area of growing wine or grapes for wine. Yeah.
Yeah, love that. And so I guess on this journey, you're spruiking and you're empowering and you're educating people to think about the world from a more regenerative space. What does that word actually mean to you? And I know there's a bit of we don't want to define it, but I'm really curious to know what it means to our guests and what it means to you at a personal level.
Yeah. What it means to me, Ray, is how do I embrace and encourage life and maximize photosynthesis? Like, that's really it for me. Really simple. And I can go into it in more detail. We'll be here all day. But the foundations of what regenerative agriculture to me is maximizing life in all aspects, including maximizing diversity, and then just maximizing photosynthesis. And there's lots of ways we can do that. But they are the must-haves or the must considers for every choice that is made for me in my life. Is this choice maximizing life? Is it maximizing photosynthesis?
Yes. Yep. So just that awareness of life and how that life under the ground and in around our ecosystems is created. I love that. And I think, it is, how do you instill that vision for people to see that? Like, is it something you can just download, or is it like, to use that word, but like, how do you inspire people? Have you found it a way to articulate it for people to really get curious and understand that world?
Yeah, well,
out of sight, out of mind,
Yeah, for sure. And you hit the nail on the head. For me, man, it's about inspiration. And I love telling stories. I really love telling stories. And a story that I tell quite often is one of very limited life. When, I was brought up in a world of chemicals being the norm, and killing every day, all day was, what do I need to kill? What do I need to control? And then who I was as a human being and as a father and as a husband, when I was married, and all of my relationships reflected that way of being, this controlling, manipulating, I'm superior, I'm separate from, I keep everything to myself. And it's no wonder my life was going how it was. I mean, on the surface, it looked like it was going great, but it's a bit like the old duck on the water thing. Like on the surface, I looked peaceful and graceful. Underneath, I was kicking like stink. And I really, I struggled to sleep at night. My relationship broke down with my ex-wife after 11 years. I had to deal with that. And then all of a sudden, this light came into my life, and it came in the form of soil. And when I started to discover, and I thought I was the expert, I really had it that I knew it all. And how limiting was that, being out there on Expert Island? It's a lonely place. And when I discovered this whole world of, life beneath our feet, it was like, holy moly, it really changed who I was as a human being. And that photo demonstrates it all. That photo was me controlling life and manipulating and killing. And then, and so that story, it sort of inspires people and creates a space for knowledge and learning to show up. Because if we don't create that space and address the listening, because in most cases what's missing is actual listening. Like, we don't listen for new possibilities. We listen for whether we know, whether we agree, whether we disagree, and all of that doesn't leave much space for learning anything new. And for most of us, we're in a world where, even doctors who go through medical school spend, the most I've heard of any doctor spending on nutrition and biology is very small. Like, we're talking a day, maybe two, out of a whole, process of becoming educated and qualified. And so when we start talking about this new world of life and biology and complexity and holism, it contradicts a lot of our current learning, which is abstract, linear, very narrow-minded ways of operating. And so inspiration is a great way to create space for listening, but then also just authenticity. Like, if I was to come in and be righteous and tell everyone, right, guys, I know exactly what there is to do. I know everything. I'm the expert. Come and see me. I'll tell you what to do. Already there's no listening possible. There's no learning possible. So really getting out of the way, what's in the way of the listening first, and then that creates a space, create a sense of relatedness, and that's done through authenticity, being really real and open. And then we come in with what learnings have I had? What can I offer this person or this group of people that would really make a difference for them?
Yeah, and you're so authentic to that. What I see you do online, and I know it's a filtered view, but you're out in there. You're sharing stuff from your personal life to your camping to where you're, which farm you're on and who you're helping and which stage, and it's just really, really refreshing to see, because it is. And it is refreshing to see and hear, and I love how you articulated that. And for our listeners who don't have the visual aid of this photo that Jono is holding up, I can assure you that you would not tell that it's the same person. There is just so much, differences. And if you are watching the video version on our Soul Learning Center, you'll see, that it's a different person, different shape of face, different energy, different smile, different glow. Like it's just, and that's from a photo, imagine if you were in and around that person and what that would do. And so thank you very much for sharing that. And, I can relate to that whole discovery of the soil, and becoming so curious about how it works and why has this been left out of the mainstream education and the narrative, and why we're not talking about this amazing life under our feet. Like it just blew my mind, and I can't stop. I literally can't stop. I keep digging and digging and digging and learning, and it fills my cup so much. What's something that like was a big aha moment for you when you first started discovering this wonderful world of soil?
Yeah. Man, I something you just said then really resonated with me around why don't we know this stuff?
Yeah.
And I just want to get something out of the way that's there for me when you ask that question. And I look at it like this as nature provides so much for free. And I think that's one of the biggest things is that, and it's so complex. It's really for us to be able to wrap our minds around this vast complexity that is these natural systems that we're just scratching the surface of. There's a whole different shift in what it is to be human for us to relate to that. But secondly, it's you follow the money in most situations, and that'll lead you to these simplified systems with reliance on certain inputs. So it's clear for me why this stuff hasn't been super available is just that reason. Secondly, aha moments. Yeah. So I talk about often the moment where I discovered plant diversity being something that increases outcomes and in particular dry matter production and animal health. That was something that really rocked my socks, because my life was as an agronomist and as an arable farmer in particular, but also as a grass farmer, growing ryegrass. And I say ryegrass farmer because that's really what I was as a dairy farmer. It didn't allow for any diversity because we had it that, and we were taught that anything but the target is a threat, is a competition, something that's going to take from us. And when I discovered having plants growing together symbiotically had them all have better outcomes, it was just like, oh my goodness. But really, Ray, what it was for me was seeing the soil as a habitat, not as this medium for nutrients to be held or to hold our roots up or to, keep our posts upright. That's really what I viewed soil as. It was like the only times I ever dug holes as a farmer was to repair posts that I'd broken or to fix water lines, etc. And the whole time while doing so, I treated it like dirt. It was the substance. It meant nothing to me. Now, you'll see me now, I don't go anywhere without a spade. I'm digging holes all the time. Some metaphorical. I use that term all the time. I'm good at digging myself holes. But no, digging holes all the time. And it's amazing just what you can understand and what you can identify with your spade, your eyes, your nose, your hands, and reconnecting those senses. And for me, when I look back on my life of analytical problem solving using soil tests and numbers and metrics that don't fit ecological function, all of a sudden it was like, yeah, that was a massive moment for me, seeing the soil as this amazing, complex, bustling habitat full of organisms doing work that I thought I needed to do, like around nutrient provision and soil structure, creating soil structure and porosity. It's like, wait a minute, that can all be done with these organisms that I can't see with my eyes. It was like, wow. And here I am out there breathing it all the time. And I'm connected to the soil and man, I don't get sick. I'll say this right now, the most powerful source of immunity is getting out there into your soil. And it's for any of the listeners that have children, and you might remember being a child at some point, is like we turn our backs on the children in the garden for 1 second and it's soil in mouth.
Yeah.
That's what they do. And I believe it's like an innate, an inherent sort of natural instinct is to just inoculate oneself with this biologically diverse substance. And And then we get, for those of you that can remember back in their childhood and running through puddles, and that's all we want to do as kids. And then next minute, it's like, go and wash your hands and look at this mess and go and, get out of that puddle and look at that dirt, stop digging holes. That's yuck, germs and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden that curiosity was diminished.
Yeah. So sad, so sad. I love the big movement now of people putting their kids into nature play that is encouraging people to make like mud pancakes and do leaf identification, and it's so really, I've gone to a couple of community gardens where they're encouraging this type of outside experiential learning, and the parents just see changes in their children pretty much in days of attending these different types of classrooms, outdoors environments. And it's just the energy of all the people and the parents kind of collaborating and seeing the world and touching it and feeling it. And I think it's really important for the soil listeners, for soil lovers out there, to just hear what Jono said about, the sounds, the taste, the touch. It's our 5 senses. Like, we're born with this stuff. We don't need lab tests. We don't need complex tools and gadgets and equipment. We've got the tools that we need right built into our bodies. We've got to start learning how to use those as our first line of defense and going, oh, this is curious. Now let's go a bit deeper and then go order the soil tests and things like that. So I want to thank you for that reminder of we have all the tools we need right on our bodies, thanks to Mother Nature.
Well, you've all had that moment where, like, for instance, you get a shower of rain and it's been so dry and there's a smell associated with that rain. That's biology. That's a biological reaction to moisture. That's life. And you can smell that. And same with those of you that have picked up soil. And I forget how foreign this is for a lot of people. For me, it's everyday life, but I've got to put myself back in those shoes that I wore 10 years ago. Yeah, you'll never catch me dead smelling soil. In fact, it was dirt, Ugh. But what there is to I want to presence you to is that ability for us to smell healthy soil is like a shark's ability to smell a drop of blood in an ocean of water, because its life depends on that. And your life depends on soil. So that smell you get when you're smelling soil, that's beyond description. And why it's so hard for me to, equate to, for all of my clients, which all have different senses of smell, how to equate, it just can't be done. I tell people they got to do it in their own words, but actually describing that smell, it's like you have a whiff of healthy soil and it's just like, it's like a very interesting thing. It's beyond any basic sense of what a smell is. It does something to the human body. And that's because good, healthy soil is the foundation of life. We are connected to that.
Yeah, I love that distinction, that analogy of the blood in the ocean with the shark and its life is dependent on it is the same reason why when we smell good soil, we're drawn to it. And when we smell bad soil or even just anything bad, we're repulsed. Like, the body knows what's good and bad for us intuitively. You don't need to learn anything. You don't need an expiry date. Back in the day, there were no expiry date. Just, it's not, oh, this part of the cheese is still good. This part isn't, and our soil is the same. And that, we're born with that natural ability to know what's good and what's not, because our main goal in life is to survive and thrive, So,
I love that, man. Like, use by dates. Whose idea was that? What a great way to sell product. Yeah. It's like when you, and cheese, what a great example. Well, in most cases, for those that enjoy cheese, it's the older the better.
Yes.
And and it's crazy that, we look at the date. Oh no, that's off. It's like in nature, you won't see wild dogs, not eat a 3-week-old carcass when they find it. It's like, actually fermented goods is actually really good for the body.
Yeah, that's right. I know. And and this is the world that's unfolding for me as I start exploring more and more of this. And that's, you start realizing, one of the things that I've realized is who's saying what, not what's been said. Who created expiry dates? Oh, the food industry who sell more. Okay. And to your point before as well, the reason why nature isn't spoken of more is because you can't capitalize on it to some degree. You can't bottle that up and say, here's a magic potion that you can put on your plants or something. Mother Nature heals and does it and builds the biodiversity and the life in the soil naturally. If we get out of the way, it's done faster, that human need of control and let me be, you know, the ego, I think it is, that really gets in the way of a lot of this kind of clarity thinking.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Now, so food, you said you're living healthier. What's your take on like healthy farmer, healthy decision? Have you seen a link in that kind of narrative?
Yeah, I actually, it's amazing that the way that we act as farmers and as custodians of the land, when I say it, it ripples out into who we're being. Like when you step out of fight or flight, fear, protect, defend, attack, the body literally changes its genetic expression, and will actually diversify biologically through just shifting your mindset. That mind-body connection is massive. When we step out of blame and guilt and victim and step into responsibility and connectedness and purpose and presence, that alone on the human body physically is massive. And you know, I'm living proof of that. 9 months ago, I had a car accident that I broke my back in 4 places, broke 9 ribs, broke my shoulder and my foot in 2 places. My children were seriously injured. My son was in a coma for 3 weeks. But through the whole process, you know, we never created any resentment towards what happened. We didn't add any drama. There was a lot of trust involved and there was very little fear. We were grateful to be alive. And the way that we healed defied medical history. In fact, next week, I'm going to get 2 titanium rods removed out of my back, the quickest anyone has ever had those rods removed. And like there's a level of risk involved in that as well. But I fully trust my body is healed in a way that's going to allow me to continue you know, functioning without those instruments. So that in itself is huge, seeing people change their mindset on the ground, seeing people become more connected with their family, with their peers, their communities, becoming a contribution to their community. It's huge. But then when they start to discover that stuff and start to discover the power of, for instance, biological diversity in the soil, and then I always make that comparison to that being very similar to the way that our guts work. When we diversify the biology or the microbiome within our gut, we literally get, you know, quorum sensing phenomenon taking place in the gut, which gives us this crazy new sense of resilience and health and performance. And people transform, Ray. It's not like an overnight thing. But it's pretty quick. And in New Zealand, I don't know about Australia, but New Zealand, the agricultural industry has the highest rates of suicide and depression in any industry. Yep. And when you look at the way that farmers have been operating and being told to operate and under the spotlight at the moment for, you know, being seen as like bad guys and destroyers of the environment, all this stuff, it's like no wonder. But here we have an opportunity to impact that. Here we have an opportunity for farmers to take responsibility and take back the power in their operations and in their lives. They're not box tickers anymore. They're not just sitting there doing what they're told. They're actually being proactive. They're creating systems that tick off all of the regulatory boxes whilst increasing production profitability. I mean, that in itself has us with happy farmers.
Excellent. Yeah. And that's why I was going down that whole health of your body and your environment. And I agree with you. And in Australia, that is a massive topic. And, you know, a lot of people don't know this, but it's actually not allowed to be reported when suicide is involved. And so we get this filtered view where we don't know the actual truths that's actually happening. The numbers are reported, but you won't see a write-up on it. And, you know, I think if there was the ability to report and call out the elephant in the room, there is a massive problem there. And seeing farmers fall back in love with their farm again, which was one of the reasons why Farming Secrets was put in place many years ago, is that Helen and Hugo could see that farmers started with this dream and they wanted to grow wholesome food and then fell into the system. And then many years later, it was a chore. It was like, how many kilos of this are we putting on this year? And what chemical input do we need to buy that we don't have money for, that we better go ask the bank for? And they're like, this is the life we signed up for. And seeing the mind shift and meeting the farmers who wake up someday and go, I'm going to do it differently. Or, I see posts everywhere now online where they say, yes, I'm a conventional farmer, but I'm open for change. And we didn't see this even 3 years ago. And so with your line of work and being in this space, how does someone, because I've seen video recordings of like farmers in a room with all their arms crossed going, you don't tell me what to do. His father did it this way. How do you slowly see that change happening in the farming world and growing world? And
It starts for me, Ray, with not making anyone or anything wrong, especially the past, because it's done. If we're to make people wrong for the decisions that they made in the past, that's when defense comes in and it's righteous and it's yuck. There's no progression there. So, firstly, just acknowledging that I know from having been at the complete other end of the spectrum of being a full-blown chemical, licensed to kill operator, to where I am now, it's like there's nothing wrong. What we have is just what we have, and owning where we're at currently, not like it's something wrong or moral, but just for what so is like, okay, this is the way that things have been. That's great. I'm going to park that and I'm just going to listen brand newly. And so getting that conflict or that friction out of the way first allows us to create, like I work with some farm operations, 3-4 active generations all working together. And if we're not open-minded and if we're righteous and holding on to the past, you can see how those situations get depicted as being very toxic. But what I see is when we deal with the past, leave the past where it is, create this blank canvas and give everyone an opportunity to give their own little contribution to this piece of art. And I'll call it a piece of art because farming is art. It really is an art form. As all of a sudden everyone gets to contribute and they're not scared to contribute and they're not scared to put their hand up and say, hey, this didn't work so well. It's like being able to own our stuff ups as much as own our wins as the way we all move forward together. So I think if you get the morality out of the situation, leave the past in the past, that gets rid of this whole, And I was actually approached this week and I was told by someone who I really, I really don't take his words lightly, as he said to me, Jono, I don't know how you do it, but when you get up and speak, people put their weapons down. And I think that all comes back to that authenticity. I'm not up there saying, right, you guys are all destroying the planet. Shame on you. What a great way to get nothing done.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, guys, here's a little bit of a story about me. I've been in the really, other end, and what I have now for you is this opportunity, this amazing opportunity. And guess what? You all get to play a part in it. All of a sudden, it's like, me? I can do that? Like I can make a difference?
Yeah.
It's like all of a sudden they wake up to how big they are.
I love the way you've just articulated that. There is no right and there is no wrong. There is no past. It's like you have to, it just aligns so much with the whole journey, and it's a process. You don't wake up one day and have all this information downloaded into your brain and that permission to stuff up. Like we've killed that culture that failure is bad. It's like, no, like some great inventions, we have moved as a race forward because of failures and stuff ups. And farmers love to innovate. They're always in the shed tinkering and welding and making new tools and how can this be faster and quicker. Like innovation.
More powerful, louder.
More power, 6 engines. Innovation is at the heart of farmers. They want to solve these problems, and I love that you've created this space for people to really find their truth and find what works for them. And there is no right or wrong, and that's what I've really loved about being in this space, is that you hear all these different ideas, and even people that are on the same land and there's a fence that divides them are doing 2 different approaches, and it's working for their model, for their outcome, their goals. It's not about looking over the fence and seeing what everyone else is doing.
And that's where innovation happens, man. Innovation doesn't happen like people who are waiting for the peer-reviewed papers. If we're going to wait for that, it's what people are forgetting is that, they have as much with their observational skills, with the support that's available. They can provide, when I say they, farmers, food production specialists, we'll call them, everyday folk like you and me. We have just as much credibility with our observations and our discoveries as anyone else. And science is not innovation. Science comes after and validates the innovation or whatever the outcome may be. So, let's not wait for the science. This is where we create and discover here.
Yeah. I was in a room the other day, a virtual room, and there was a scientist, and they literally were walking a paddock and they said, I don't care about the science. I'm seeing this with my own eyes, and what's happening is leaps and bounds ahead of what we're doing in the lab.
Yes.
And everyone was just in awe, everyone was just like, this is, and I agree, like the science is there to back up a curiosity after someone's had that idea. And if you wait for the science to be the leader, we kind of got our foot backwards. We need to question and go, this feels right. This sounds right. This looks better. Then the science will catch up if it even needs to, because put in all legislation, people hide behind this. I'll wait until it's law. I'll wait until it's like required that I need to do this. Why?
Yeah. And also, the other thing that I invite the listeners to get excited about, although some may not find it very exciting, is that guess what? We're never done. We're never at a point where it's like, this is it. I've got the answer. What we're dealing with here is a dynamic, always changing organism. And right now in New Zealand, what we're dealing with is really old, really industrially tainted data. And when I say industrially tainted, it's like when all of a sudden free to use funding of science disappeared from government, and all of a sudden it had to be done through the private sector. All of that, all the questions that are asked really reflect the outcome that the provider of the funds for the science wants to see. And sadly, that's how science was done for many decades. It's like, okay, here we have a problem. Here we have a funding source. All right, guys, tell us what we need to find out. What do you want this to work, or do you want it to not work? And then the science, nothing against them. They're just doing what they need to do to put food on the table, as they then go and ask the right questions, perform the right studies that give us the right answer. So like it being scientifically safe to smoke while pregnant, like it being scientifically safe to use DDT, not only in our food production systems, but in areas like in our beds to kill bed bugs and things like that. That was all scientifically proven at one point. So we must not stick to something being true forever. Yep. Let's always have a sense of curiosity. I shared a post last week, and I would rather have questions that cannot be answered than have answers that cannot be questioned. So don't stop questioning.
Yeah, hear to that, brother. I couldn't agree with you more. And, being in the marketing world and seeing some of the marketing campaigns of the early days of like smoking being healthy, and these doctors recommend camels. It's like, wow, like this is like everyone was doing the best of what they knew at that point. We put lead in paint, we put asbestos everywhere. Like everyone thought they were doing the right thing. And there's nothing to say that right now we're all doing the right thing. And in 20 years time, massive red flags, kind of scratching our head going, how did anyone even think that was sane, and that's exactly my thought with science, and love science, and it's definitely needed, and I'm not anything, but it's just knowing how science works and even the funding. And that's why I said before, it's about who's saying what and not what's being said, because a lot of the funding behind this and the hypothesis, as we know from year 10 or early day science, you always set the hypothesis at the start and you go and collect all the data to prove the hypothesis. And so that in itself, for me is like, I get it. And I like the fact that it's proved, but what's someone else over here saying, and like, I've been saying this a lot lately, and I don't know if I get in trouble saying this online, but it's like the skincare company is never going to fund a research where the water is better for your skin. Never.
Yeah.
Not incentivized,
100%. Yeah.
And maybe we're here thinking water's no good for our skin. Yet that could be the magic source, but no one's funded that research, so it's not backed by science.
100%.
So it's interesting. I love that you and I think the same way when it comes to that. And I'm meeting more and more people, and especially in the world that we're living in now, where everything's kind of like, oh, but backed by science. But it's like, yeah. Anyway, let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So, Jono, I've loved chatting with you, and I really want to give you the opportunity to become the voice of our soils. So, are you ready?
Yeah.
Excellent. If you were the voice of our soils, and right now you are, what would you tell us on Earth?
That silence is intentional, because I can't speak. The soil's too tight. I can't breathe. I'm trying to say, hey guys, I'm down here. You need to look after me. I need help. Right now I'm drowning, or I'm too dry. I'm burnt. I need fed. You're not feeding me what I need. And that's I just made that up then, that I just put myself down there, and that's what I would say. As I'd be saying, hey guys, please, remember me down here.
Yep.
I can help you.
Yeah, I love that. And this is the reason why I don't share this question for the listeners. No one knows that this question's coming up unless they've been active listeners. But it is about just saying what's in the heart right then. And I love that. There was silence. I can't speak. I'm suffocated. I'm squashed. I'm tight. I'm, not able to give the life that I need because you're absolutely suffocating me, thinking you're doing the right thing. And I really felt that. I knew the silence was intentional. Podcast, so you start freaking out when there's silence.
Yeah, I didn't want you to freak out. Yeah,
I could feel it. it. And I really want to thank you for taking me and the soil listeners into that space and becoming the voice of our soil. Jono, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I know that you and I can chat for years and years and days and days. And I can't wait for border restrictions to ease so I can come and hang out physically with you in New Zealand. I've just self-invited myself, by the way.
Yeah, no, sure. Doors always open.
Excellent. Is there any final words that you want to share with our soil lovers?
No, just get curious. Doesn't matter who you are. If you eat food, then the soil is important to you. And in fact, there's no one that doesn't eat food. But really, this impacts us all. This affects us all. And there is so much yet to be contributed to be discovered. When we look at soil, I say this all the time, we literally know more about space than soil, and that's saying something. Yeah. And so there's a lot to be discovered. And with that, we need new perspective. We need different thoughts. We need different eyes looking at things so that we can come up with new solutions, new possibilities, new systems that might have us all thrive together. Because, I believe that the future is a collaborative one, and that we need to work together more than ever. So that's my invitation. Get educated, get learning, lots of stuff online. Follow my YouTube channel, follow all the links in my bio. You'll learn plenty on there, and have a lot of fun. It is good fun. Totally
addicted to this fun, I'll tell you that much. Jono, the links will be around the show notes. If you're listening on audio, and if you're in the Soil Learning Center, the links will also be around the video version of this. And I couldn't agree more, with the life under our feet, and we know more about space than what we do about the soils that we walk on every day. So Jono, thanks very much for sharing your wisdom and digging deep with myself and our soil listeners via this podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ray, and thanks everyone for listening.
Excellent. Well, soil lovers, there you have it. You get outside, look up into space, but also remember to look down what's beneath the ground and get your hands dirty and keep digging deeper into our wonderful world of soils. I'm Regen Ray. Well, soil lovers, that's enough secrets for one episode. I really hope that you enjoyed all the secrets shared during this conversation. But hey, let's not keep it a secret. Please share this podcast around and make sure that you like it and leave us a review, because that really helps spread the secrets of the soil. Until next time, remember, get outside, get your hands dirty, and keep digging deeper